Hi everyone, and welcome to the first Tenjin Data Scientist webinar. We are happy today to have three very interesting speakers. We have Julia from Popcore, you from Greenpanda, and Sophie from Juicy Publishing. So for this first edition, we wanted to create this webinar to give the data scientists a place to come and learn from each other. And this session is definitely about data scientists of hyper-casual. So first, we'll start with a small round of introduction. Julia, can you tell us more about you?
Yes, I'm a data scientist at Popcore, or I was just finished my last day on Friday. I was at Popcore for about 1.5 years, and I was the first data scientist there. So I really got to see the entire data science journey of Popcore. And before that, I've worked for 5 years as a data scientist in different companies and different settings.
What kind of industry?
It's really been a mix, consultancy and retail and banking. So a wide variety. No gaming before.
And can I ask you, what will you do after Popcore?
Yes, so I'm taking a few months off just to focus on my family at the moment, and then we'll see what happens after that. It's freedom and adventure.
Yeah, a year like 2020, I think it's good to take some time for yourself and for family.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks. What about you? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Newmon. Actually, I'm from Greenpanda Games, which is based in Paris. Now, I see from 2000, I think, well, now we are part of like Ubisoft mobile, big family, which is like, there's also like Chef and Colibri and like OVMs and several like studios. Yeah.
Huge group.
And exactly. Yeah, we're on the big family. Yeah. And so like for Greenpanda, actually like we are a company which is like today like focused on the hyper casual games, and then like little by little like emerging also to the casual games. Yeah. And about myself, actually I have joined Greenpanda like 2 years before as the first data person in the team. So which means like I have like built this like the data team from scratch. And like which means like I'm not like limited to data science, but also to like data engineering and also like data analytics. Yeah. And for my background, I have a background with both business and like technique. Yeah. And I have worked in the advertising, marketing, and also like online dating. Yeah. And like I just actually started the game industry just 2 years before.
Okay. Fairly similar to Julia. How about you, Sophie? You're joining us from Lyon, right?
Yeah, exactly. I am currently the data scientist at Juicy Publishing, which is based in Lyon. We are publishing games for hyper casual only for now. I've been in the company for like 2 years. In March, it will be 2 years. And I am the first data scientist of the team, properly speaking, because there was one employee before that was doing everything. So he put the basis of the data science at Juicy, and I continued the project. Before that I've been tool developers for the industry, for piping industry, specifically. But I love data, so I specialized in data analysis and science.
Okay, cool. So it is very interesting that you all three have in common that you were the first data scientist in the company you were at, or you are currently at. So maybe let's start with you, Sophie. How was the data stack when you started, and did you feel like you inherited things that needed to be completely changed, or how was the process until today?
Actually, it was the bases were there, so the business was already targeting what we wanted to spot and to watch as metrics. Mm-hmm. So we had a basis with your help, actually, with Tenjin, and we had sold the data vault from Tenjin, and we had the visualization on Mod Analytics, which is a platform that is easy to query SQL and to to code a little of Python. So yeah, that was the basis, and we worked after that to improve all the metrics and all the process that are going with the metrics. Yeah, that's
okay. Yeah, so maybe just for the listener, Data Vault is a product from Tenjin that put the attribution and cost and ad revenue data in a database, so that effectively data scientists like us can quickly just query it. What about you? How was the stack when you started, and what changed? Like a lot of things changed.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Actually, when I joined, to be honest, we are really on the ground zero. Yeah, like at that time, we don't have like a real, for example, data warehouse, etc. So we really did like a benchmark to look at like the different products and solutions in the market. And then we just finally decided to choose like Google Cloud, which includes like BigQuery, because at that time, which we believe is the best adapt to our resources and our like needs. Yeah. So like currently we are still like based on Google, and we are quite happy like with like the Google solution. Especially we can see like Google has like just released a lot of like new features in the last like 2 years, and we feel like really like the products and enriched a lot. And especially like for us, it's like we are also using Firebase. So the links between Firebase and Google is really like as a fly. We're really happy about like our choice and the solution. Yeah.
Was it more a question of cost or of feature who convinced you to go with Google Cloud rather than?
At that time, it's really about like the resource, because when I first started, I was like the first person. So my first job is to build our data warehouse to centralize all the data, like different sources. For example, at that time from Tenjin, from like Library, which is Ascend today.
Yeah.
So and first it's like we don't at that time, so we only have one person. We didn't have like too much support from data engineering. And if we start with, for example, like AWS or like Snowflake, yes, we need to have definitely need to have data engineer, and also like very professional like data engineer to start. Yeah. So, but Google actually, the integration with Google is much easier. Even though you don't have like very strong data engineering background, you can just start can say quite quickly and smoothly. So that's why at that time we decided to choose like Google.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Very interesting. What about you, Julia? How was the stack at the beginning?
Yeah, it was there wasn't a lot built up, there wasn't a lot there, but I came just before I joined Popcore. I'd had my own startup, and we didn't even have a data engineer. So that was completely, I'm not expert in the backend stuff at all. So it had been completely Wild West, and these solutions are really just made out of duct tape. So compared to that, just like having actually backend engineers on the team who were really super skilled, that just felt like a luxury after that experience. Yeah. And also comparing to some of the other companies I've been at who are like more legacy, they would have data structures, they would have databases, but they would be really old and they wouldn't work properly. So compared to that as well, being able to build something up from scratch that actually serves your purpose was a great, a huge difference, and it was really positive. And I think when I joined fairly soon afterwards, we started using Snowflake, which is a tool that I really like using. I think it's super for me as an end user with data, it's super easy to use, and I was really impressed and happy with that. And I know they use Amazon AWS as well. I don't know the details of the technical background, but I don't have any complaints. It's been really easy to work with the data.
So do you mean it's the backend engineer who took the decision to go with Snowflake? Or? Okay,
yes, it was completely their completely their decision.
You were happy with the capacity?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, just compared to working at these more legacy companies where you don't even know who set up the system or why it works as it does. It was so much easier, even when a problem comes up, to be able to work that closely with a backend team was a huge improvement.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can imagine to have this kind of help when you're effectively the first one and you need to learn on the spot and build things. You don't know if it's going to fail and everything. It's very cool. Good. So what's your opinion for the listener? Let's say we are a small hyper-casual team and we're thinking to start launching more games and start investing in our data infrastructure. And also what is interesting, I think, is that different of you have different attribution provider in terms of how you receive attribution data or even cost data and ad revenue data. What would be your advice for someone who need to build this from scratch? Someone want to pick it up?
Yeah, for me, the first question to ask is what do you want to drive your business, and what are the data that you want to see. So if you are ROIs driven or LTV prediction driven, and then build your tools in that order to see these metrics. That was our first step at Juicy, and then we added more tools to improve the process of UA, particularly for monitoring and processing UA, changing the bids and etc. So we wanted to. We built an internal tool to do that, but you have some in the industry, like bid check or some like that.
Yeah.
You have to the choice of the MMP are very difficult. So we went for Tenjin, but we are constantly looking if there is new updates on other and etc. So we are actually with Tenjin for now, and we are glad for with our choice, but I think it depends on the business and how you handle it. Yeah, that's.
How easy was the project of building this internal bidding tool? I know that's a project that a lot of hyper casual want to pick up, and most of them are a bit fearful of how difficult it's going to be.
Actually, we are lucky to have one very good tool developer in our team. So it was quite easy for him to develop something and to call the different API and change the bids, etc. But we first asked if we preferred to develop the tools or just find one in the industry, like I said, a bid check, do the same. But yeah, it's a cost after that, so it's a choice.
Okay, so the main reason to build it in-house was the cost and the fact that you had the ability in-house.
Yeah, and the fact that I prefer developing tools in intern because you have what you want exactly, so it fits to your needs, and it's very, very important, I think.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
What do you advise to like company who get started with building their stack? What are the first thing they should tackle?
Yeah. Actually, for me, like the first thing is always back to your data infrastructure. You know, like actually all the things, for example, like we can say automation bidding or like data science is always based on like your like solid, robust, like data infrastructure. Yeah. So my first like suggestion is always to choose it like properly. First, based on your resources. If you're like you have like more, for example, the engineers like background, or like in your team is more like analytics like background, and these like different resources could like make you like start in different approaches. For example, if you have more like engineers, of course you can go in more into, for example, AWS or like Snowflake or Azure. But if you're in your team, they are more like on the business, on the analytics part, maybe Google may be like your like better choice. Yeah. And the second part is also look at like what you already have today. For example, if you're using Gmail, you're using like Firebase, in this way, like choosing Google, which will give you like a very seamless like this correlation between all your services. But if you're using Outlook, in this way, maybe like Azure, it will be easier for you. Yeah. And then except that, like for me, one choice is also to really look at like what's your needs and what are your use cases. Yeah, because in my point of view, like data science or data, it's not a utopia. It's not just about like some like super cool like guys which are just writing code and algorithms. You should really think about, okay, what the data science could bring to me and what my use cases, how it could help you to solve my issues, solve my actual practical issues. Yeah, because I think usually hyper casual games we're not like a huge scale. Usually it's like less than 100 people. So you have to use all your resources smartly, and where you should deploy, for example, your data science with data scientists and your data science resources. Yeah.
Good, thanks very much. Julia, what about you? What would be your advice?
Yeah, actually, I think what both of you have said makes a lot of sense. But one thing that I would also really like to add is accuracy, to make sure that the data you have, if you're getting data from different sources, do they actually tell you the same thing? Like if there's a way to double check the numbers that you get, I would really advise that, because especially I think a lot of people that are outside of data science, they still view data science as, a bit of a black box. They're not sure they can trust it. And if you start getting results that are really goes against people's common sense or their expectations, people are going to be very suspicious of those numbers. And I think that would be one of the first things I would advise a data science team is, just or any data team, just make sure that the data that you have, that it is truthful. It's so easy, especially when you're in a startup, it's so easy to accidentally, you're setting up an ETL tunnel for the first time. It's so easy that something goes wrong and you get numbers that don't really make sense. And the sooner you can catch that, the better. And it sounds like maybe a very basic advice, but it's better to worry about that in the beginning rather than later when you've already set up your experiments and your algorithms and so on.
So even if that means kind of doubling the work, finding two sources of the same data.
Well, maybe not, maybe not for everything, because of course you don't want to bring in maybe 2 third-party providers. That's that's a lot of work. But I feel there's a lot of times where you could get the same numbers, you could check number of installs both from Google Play Store and from your tracking provider, for instance, and just double checking that it sort of makes sense.
And then would you advise to do this at least at the beginning to make sure all the data is good in place, and then you could give up this monitoring, or would you keep this monitoring in place?
Yes, I would advise to set up some monitoring on that. Just just check those numbers every once in a while to make sure they're in line.
Yeah, it is actually a very common issue that a new app is getting launched and the monetization is not what the customer expected, and it's just because one API was failing or one monetization channel was not reporting the data correctly. So
Exactly.
It helps to have, even if it's a different metrics that you have as a benchmark, like ad impression or something else than the revenue, that show you that, oh no, there shouldn't be such a drop. It's very cool.
Exactly. And especially for hyper casual as well, if you're publishing many games, you want to compare to a baseline with your other games. If that baseline is suddenly not right anymore, you have to figure out where that comes from.
That helps. So in your career at Popcore, what was one of the most interesting projects you had, or one you learned the most from? Anything you would want to share with us?
Yeah, there's been so many, and it's but obviously the LTV project has been that's huge and that's very central, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more later as well. We had one really interesting project that I learned a lot from, which is using machine learning to decide which level the user should see next. So, simpler level for users who might not be very good at the game, or harder levels for users who want more of a challenge. And that was, for me, that was really interesting. It's the first time I used unsupervised learning and so on. And it was a really fascinating project.
How fast?
That's been really cool.
How fast could you recommend which level to show to the user?
We tried a bunch of different, many different setups, how quickly should we introduce, the algorithm is choosing next level. And I think the earliest we used was 5, but we also experimented up to we don't use the recommendation engine until after level 30. So it was, it was, we tried a lot of different variations.
Is there anything you can tell us about the tool you use for this machine learning project, or even what programmation language or any?
Yes. Yeah, this was all done in Python and set up on AWS.
All in-house.
Yes, exactly.
Do you have a project at Greenpanda that you found particularly interesting or that was very critical in the growth of the company?
Yeah, sure, of course. Like, I tried, like, to be honest, like, during my past 2 years, like the first year is really about like, build like the data infrastructure, the data warehouse, centralize all the data, and also break like, the bricks between like each different data like sources, and then create the dashboard, the report, and etc. Yeah. And then like the second half, especially since last year, we are really step into like we try to like step into the casual game like industry, which is like more complicated and which like really needs like more in depth and like customized data analysis and like a data science. So we did like with our last game, we really did a lot of like customized like just data analysis. From at the very beginning, we really like integrate into the like production process of like the game. Yeah. So which like starting from design all the event trackings, yeah, and all like the parameters and how then like decide like, how we use like this event tracking to set our analysis. And then like we start, then we just conduct this analysis, and based on this analysis, like we just like send our feedback to our like producers and game designers to help them like to optimize the games and to like understand the user behavior and also to analyze like the new features, etc. Yeah. So for me, that was like really we can say a really like an exciting like project, and also set up a very good foundation for our future like casual game like development. Yeah. And so now we're just trying to sum up all the best practices and set up like a standard like process and like and guidelines for the future games. Yeah. So that's like the data on the data part will be like more smooth, much more smoothly like for the new games. Yeah. So this is like one part, and the other part which I feel like very interesting is about the changes on iOS part. Yeah, with the iOS 14, with like deprecation of IDFA and SK ad network, especially like how we could, since we don't have user level data, how could we like continue like for example the LTV prediction, user segmentation, and also etc. with like the SK ad network, and that's a very interesting part like work to do, and we are still like trying to like investigating on it.
So that's a very interesting topic, of course, iOS 14. That's, I think if I would have asked this question at the end of 2021, everybody's most interesting project would have been to adapt to iOS 14. So today, what are you preparing for? Like mainly just receiving a new type of data with SK ad network postback, or you're even changing already like the granularity at which you're looking at the metrics like LTV and ROI?
Yeah. So for iOS 14 part, it's like, of course, we did like A/B tests to see like what will be like user consent rate in different countries, yeah, and regarded and different types of games and between, like, for example, old users and new users. For this part, it was already done, and also like we have concrete data based on our games, because it really depends like based on like companies and your games, yeah. So on this part, at least we have some concrete like numbers, yeah.
Okay.
And then on the yeah.
Well, I know that in the industry, we talk about the consent will be about 80% of the user would opt out. Can you tell us, is it more or less what you got as well, or did you get better results?
Yeah, I think like it's around that. Yeah, it's I think it's around that. And I would say we really need to be like, like maybe a bit more conservative than optimistic on this one, especially in the US market. Okay. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And then for the SK ad network, for this part, yeah, we are just like, we have started like our tests, like, with SK network, especially like, to test on their like conversion values, because like, you can only choose one conversion value, which is like from 0 to 33. So you really need to like choose it smartly. And also like about which, and based on different campaigns, which like conversion value you want to send. And we are like testing on it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if your newer game are casual, I'm guessing deciding what event for the conversion value is a bit more complex, because it wouldn't be simply LTV prediction or ad impression. It would be more custom events.
Yeah, exactly. Since especially there's a timer. So which means if we don't like send it to like in the first 24 hours, then it will expire and you cannot send it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Tough challenge.
Yeah, definitely. But it's also exciting. Yeah, that will be the future.
Yes, that's coming up in the next few weeks or months. What about you, Sophie? In Juicy Publishing, I'm sure you seen a lot of different projects and a lot of different change.
Yeah, true. And the project I want to talk today is the data vault that we are creating now. So it's a project in in course, but yeah, we want to have the data on our we want to be to have the data on our side. So we are building a data vault that will let us have the aggregated level that we want based on your data. And yeah, with as you said, with iOS 14, it's a big challenge today. So we want to have the most flexible data vault possible which could talk with all our different tools, so Tenjin, the API, Firebase, etc. So yeah, this is our biggest challenge today, and this is a very interesting project right now.
Did you choose which data storage solution?
Yeah, we choose as you actually we choose Google. We choose BigQuery because we already have a database on BigQuery for the data from Firebase. So we want to centralize all our data on the same technology. So yeah, BigQuery for now.
Mm-hmm. Then I would say my last question this time is, there's two main projects I would say the hyper-casual industry often talk about, and we mentioned both of them already, like LTV prediction or internal bidding tool. What would be your recommendation? Is there an order between these two that people should do, or is there any pitfall people should watch after if they want to start one project?
For me, there is no. I think the priority is to decide. It's different from one company to another. For example, for us, we work with LTV prediction, so we had to work on that first, and then build a product on it. But some companies I know are working with ROS D0 or D3 or D7, so you don't need prediction, and in this case you can focus on tools.
How far do you predict?
Day 16.
Day 16, wow, pretty cool.
Yeah.
What do you think? LTV prediction or bid management?
Well, I think like same as Sophie said, I think first you started to start with LTV, and LTV like first you must like make sure you already have like correct historical like LTV, and that's where you start to build like your LTV like prediction. Yeah, and also like LTV prediction is also based on games. Yeah, because for us it's super complicated. Even though we are like in our portfolio, the most of them are like hyper casual games. We also have classic games, which is like solitaire. We also have like some like new casual games. Yeah, you see like these games actually they are very different like from each other. So which means you cannot have like a model which applies to all of them. Yeah, and you have to really like design like the model based on like which game that. Yeah, so I'd say like just start from the LTV. And then for the bidding, actually, it's the same. I think like today, a lot of the bidding tools actually they are not that like you can say like advanced or predictive yet. They're still like using historical data. Yeah. So like I think first is try to make sure you have like your correct historical data. Then the next step is about like prediction. And then about like the bidding, I think there's also like tools and even like Aquavin or even like Iron Source is also trying to like offer these tools. And so you have to like choose wisely between like a third party tool or you want to have like your internal like kind of solution. Because if you want to have your internal solution, it is very important to to make sure like the volume and also like the speed and the validity of the like your calculation computation and how you send or share these data, for example, into your internal like process or send to a third party platform. Yeah. So I'd say like on this part, there's still like lots of ways to do, and also you have to really have your resources. If on your background, like backend part, if not they capable to do it or not. If they are not, maybe to choose a third party tool. If you're really very confident with like your internal developing skills, then of course internal tool will be better, which you have like the control of like each part. Yeah.
Exactly like Sophie mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Julia, what do you think doing LTV prediction and bid management?
Well, I would say just for like specifically for hyper casual, so much of the revenue and the profit is determined on how much you spend on your bids, or like the accuracy of your bids, so to speak. So I would say that I would personally prioritize that slightly higher. However, I'm not necessarily sure that is something that a data scientist, or like that would be a data scientist's full-time project. Like for instance at Popcore, that was in the domain of the UA team, and they were like, super skilled guys who were really, like they were really good at that. And that's not necessarily like, it's rule-based rather than like machine learning prediction. So with that said, the biggest project for like the data science team was still LTV prediction rather than bid management. But yeah, it depends on what the structure of the company is. Like, is there a UA team who have done this before and have the skills necessary to make accurate bids? Or is it like you're starting completely from scratch and you only have data scientists? Well, then they should probably focus their energy on bids. Is my advice.
But yeah, it's true that it's easier for the data scientists to jump on this project if UA already have some either specific rule they want just to automate, and then it's just about automating these things. Yeah. Or if they decide to go the machine learning road, but then it can become a black box. And it's hard to trouble.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing your knowledge today. I'm sure the listener learn a lot about what it is to be a data scientist in hyper casual, if they want to move to the gaming and hyper casual industry, or if they've just started there. Thanks a lot, and we hope to catch up with you later.
Thank you, and thanks a lot.
Sure, thank you. With pleasure.